the day. To take this discussion forward, let me introduce Shweta Tiwari, co-founder and CEO of Startup Rezo, and she's the moderator as well. Shweta, over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
I hope you all had a great session. Anil's session was quite energetic and quite impactful. And he set the bar much higher, and I'm sure all of us will do a lot of justice to it and continue the pace from there. So, good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the session today. I hope you all are doing safe and indoors. I have with me four of my panel members today. Ranjan will be dialing in soon. Meanwhile, I have Snehal Dhruva, who is the founder and CEO at Superfan Studios. Manoj Dawani, who is the founder and CEO at Viton Media Analytics. Ganesh Surya Narayanan, who is the co-founder and CTO at Mylan Foundry. And Ranjan Kumar, who is the founder and CEO of Enphec Technologies. He'll be joining us very shortly. So let's move on to the panel discussion. So even before COVID happened, media and entertainment as a sector was always at the cusp of a transformation. And COVID, rather than the lockdown, as the most of us call it, has been one of the major or another important push to the sector towards adopting technology solutions. And today I have four individuals with me who have been in the broader media and entertainment industry since I think cumulatively over 50 plus years now. And more importantly, these are individuals who have been early movers in terms of adapting technology solutions in the M&E sector by creating their own deep tech technology solutions for solving the problem in the broader industry. So I'll now request each of my panel members to introduce themselves. Maybe, Priya, since I see you first on my screen, let's start with you. So maybe you can help us introduce yourself with a brief introduction about the company.
Sure, absolutely. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Nihal Dhruv. I run a company called Superfan Studio, and essentially we've been in the space for more than 5 years now. And our focus is helping brands adapt latest technologies. We work with primarily lots of media entertainment customers, also sports, and lots of brands. And the idea being there are several technologies. How do you make sense of it? And what's the right mechanism to deploy when? And if you see, like I'm wearing shades, but not actually. And that's what we essentially do is enable the virtual connection. When you can't physically be there, how do you still get your brand presence, make it count, and kind of get a share of social voice from the customer.
Thank you, Snehal. Ganesh, over to you.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ganesh Suryanarayanan. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Mylan Foundry. We're a deep tech startup based out of Bangalore. We are working in the area of unstructured data, specifically in the area of video, voice, text, images, IoT data, and how we could transform experiences for users, audio, video experiences on the edge in real time on consumer devices, because the confluence of AI, 5G technology, and now the demographic is a perfect storm for folks like us to introduce technology such that players can improve their revenues and also improve the experiences for users. That's what we do.
Thank you, Ganesh. Manoj.
Hi, good morning, all. Great to be here, especially following kind of an Anil Nair kind of keynote is not going to be easy, like Shweta has said. I think he put out some very, very interesting thoughts. I'm going to cross-reference some of them. Briefly about me, I have spent most of my life, 27 years of working either in telecom services on the tech side, which means with Ericsson, or with telecom services on the services side, which means with a Bharti or a Vodafone. And after that, got into a bit of consumer internet experiences with Shadi.com, Moj.com, and finally started my own venture 2.5 years back, which is into media analytics. What we do is basically try to measure media consumption on smartphones, which is the dominant screen across most of the consumption screens that mankind currently knows. And we then analyze these events that we capture from the phone and put them into meaningful dashboards that can be actioned either for media planning from the advertising side, or for content curation from the editorial side, or from marketing and sales angle, the promotions that they do. So we, in one line, construct seed audiences because we run off a panel of 12,000 people in the country. These seed audiences are then lookaliked into larger databases and finally served on ad networks via DMPs. So that is the value chain that we follow. More about us later. Thanks a lot, Shweta.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj. Over to you, Ranjit.
Hi, Shweta. Thanks a lot for having me here. Hi, I'm Ranjan. I'm founder and CEO of a company called Zentropic Tech. 4.5 years now into business. What we do is help brands and consumer emotion. So we use various proprietary technologies like brainwave mapping, facial coding, eye tracking to understand deep dive consumer nuances and behavior and help both sides to create more consumer centric content and experiences. So that's what we broadly do. Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you, Ranjan. Thank you, everyone, for the introduction. So moving on to the panel discussion, Ganesh, my first question is to you.
Sure.
We also keep hearing about India desperately needs deep tech startups in order to take digital transformation in the M&E sector to the next level. And since you guys at Milan Foundry work towards a digital transformation, can you help our audience today understand what is this transformation that we keep talking or we keep hearing about? Can you share some thoughts on that?
Sure, happy to. So thanks for the question. So happy to give my views on that. So as Milan goes, we are a deep tech company. We're not an M&E company, so we have a little bit of a observer view on this based on discussions we have with customers and stakeholders. So I'll give my perspective from outside in versus inside in, because that's not how we are looking at it from outside in, and we're part of that process of transformation. So fundamentally, digital transformation, what is it? It's most of these M&E players are looking to do one of two or three things in the process of transforming themselves. One is, how do you improve business performances, and how do you increase or enhance the value of customer experience? So these are two things that are at a high level the core of transformation, right? So how do you use technology or other methods? We are of course talking technology. So in this, I'll talk about broadly two or three things that we see as transformations occurring in the M&E space, and the use of AI in this, which is a very good enabler for getting this done. So typically, you could look at personalization and engagement, right? So today, Gen Zs, millennials, they are willing to spend more, engage more, interact more for more personalized content. It's not the way it was earlier when there was a broadcast and you would accept what you saw. What you'd actually be now is, expect more interaction, expect more engagement. Like even Snehal will tell you, use of AR, VR, the engagement is very key. So how can you use AI to personalize the engagement and make it a service? So if you see, it was always a one-size-fit-all kind of a methodology before of broadcasting content and accepting that content. It's no longer the case. Now it's actually not yet one size. It's not personalized to the extent of one-to-one, but it's getting to that point. It's a journey. So in this journey, personalization, engagement, and providing a service around it based on certain aspects of each individual user is one transformation we are seeing, and AI can play a part there. Another part is on the business side of things. As you know, M&E is a very cost-intensive business, and revenues are always lagging, generally speaking, expense. So companies are not making a lot of money. There are exceptions, of course. Generally, revenues are lagging expenses. So can you use AI to optimize and streamline operations? These are one of the themes we are seeing quite a bit. Things like, because again, you can do things like real-time analytics. You can do near real-time analytics. You could use robotic process automation to enhance and streamline the entire flow of content delivery and management. So there are several areas where transformations are occurring in enterprises, where enterprises will actually know, or now getting to know, what their customers are doing, what they are watching, what's important for them, and also use technology to streamline the delivery process. That's another area we're seeing. And one more point, I'll just talk about one more point before giving it to the others, is that the main source of revenue was advertisements. It still is advertisements, but it is from a transformation from gross advertisements to like a campaign-driven or a personalized outcome-based advertisement. So also moving from one size fit all to subscriptions. So these transformations also are occurring such that you now have more streamlined, targeted methods of reaching out to customers and having different subscription models to suit different genres, different tastes, etc. So we're also seeing that transformation occurring in the methods of monetization. So these are 2 or 3 things that we are seeing happening, and we're part of that journey. It's not yet there; it's a journey. We're still getting there.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's quite interesting to understand. So, just extending to this point, Manoj, I'll come to you. So today with COVID, we've seen multiple industry either being positively or negatively impacted. And more importantly, businesses are now understanding the need for technology, right? The need for doing digital transformation. So in your experience, can you help us understand what's happening in the M&E space specifically? What is the impact that you are seeing because of COVID? And are you seeing companies now moving forward and adapting technology or deep tech solutions?
Absolutely. So I think we should probably just unsolicited kind of comment over here is we should even stop calling it some COVID impact. It is some kind of thing that has happened in the world. It could be a Halley's comet. It could be a meteor hit, or it could be a dinosaurial extinction event. It doesn't matter. What matters is what has come out on the other side of the tunnel. And I really like the perspective that Snehal had given, when we were chatting up last Saturday, is on the M&E side, this particular impact has had adverse impact on offline businesses. And maybe he can talk about it a little later. And it has had a positive impact on online businesses. Let's put it like that, very generically speaking, rather than going into micro segments over there. And on the offline businesses, we know what has happened to the cinema occupancy rates, and whether it is going to a mall or going to an event in MMRDA grounds in Bombay or wherever, let's say. So that is very evident. On the online side, while I won't call it a blessing in disguise, but I call it a adoption of the human nature, meaning Darwin had explained this concept long back for animals, and it is pretty much there. There was no chance in hell. My mother is 85 years old. Of course, she has a smartphone, but she's always been only talking to all my aunts and mausies and whoever, wherever they are in the world. Now that is gone. It is only video. I'm telling you, whether it is WhatsApp or Zoom वरती फक्त 40 मिनिटं मिळतात म्हणे. Zoom works only for 40 minutes. Is all known to someone who would least bother about technology. So having had this impact and come out of the other side of the tunnel or slowly emerging is a very central behavioral change that we will see. However, let me tell you another thing also, which I noticed in a very, very well anointed seminar hosted by Google. They have a thing called Think with Google. And I like the concept that they said that there are, if you take a matrix of audio, video, and gaming, these are the 3 more known M&E kind of sites. And if you cross tab that with rows of information driven and entertainment driven, you will see that information driven consumption, like news, कि क्या हो रहा है COVID में, everywhere. ABP News was up, NDTV was up, all news channels were up, and even now they probably tend to be up, let's say. The second one is on information driven things on what do I do during COVID. So information driven things that happen probably are only for the event, and the habit may not stay. It may die down and come back to normal, let's say. The second portion, probably what I saw or what the report talked about is entertainment driven, saying that in audio, you started listening more to radio, you started listening more to audio streaming. You started not only having your playlist, but also people were listening a lot to devotional. For some reason, maybe out of scare or maybe out of fate, they were listening a lot to devotional. The podcasting genre has suddenly come out, in audio. And people are now very comfortable listening to long format audio shows. This habit may probably stay after the endemic, kind of tapers off or flattens or whatever. But it will have a residual impact that the human beings probably will carry. I'm generalizing, it may be different in different countries or different regions of the world. But But that's the second one, which has got an impact, which may probably have a residual stay. Television viewing went up, because of Mahabharat being screened, or Netflix really zoomed by 60-70%. And probably by now it is tapering back into, if not normalcy, but slightly higher. So that's the second impact. The third impact is where it has given you, like it gave to my mother, the Zoom kind of facility. It has given you something that you would not have done normally. When I was with Ericsson, I was going to Stockholm every second month. And it's a 2 lakh rupee ticket up and down business class, given to some chief executives who are wearing ties and stuff like that. Coming back, so and so. That's gone. It is absolutely gone, I'm telling you. And I'm just giving an absurd example, but I can tell you that this is the third habit formation which has happened out of this, using technologies like audio, video, and gamification, which potentially are permanent changes that we will see. So if I were to encapsulate what has happened after COVID and before COVID, I think there are pundits who have written theses on it completely. But I would encapsulate it in this 3x2 matrix, which is audio, video, and gaming, against information-driven content requirement and entertainment-driven content requirement. Itna hi, meaning in this 3x2 matrix, you can fit the whole of humanity. There may be some outliers, but there will always be. So that's my submission on interpreting COVID. And therefore, maybe during the course of the conversation, we can say, so what? Abhi aage kya kare? But that's a question for you to ask, Shweta, not to me. Back to you.
Let me move forward, and let's take the discussion to some specific segments. So I understand that. Or let us just spend another few minutes understanding the whole value chain and then deep diving in each of them. And since all four of you represent each of the value chain, each of the segment of the value chain, Snehal, let me come to you this time. And you work with a lot of brands, right? And while you're working with a lot of brands, you help them in terms of marketing, in terms of their community engagement through your AR/VR solutions. So as a brand, how do I get visibility, or how do I promote AR/VR solutions? Can you give us a couple of examples here?
Sure. So leading on from what Manoj said as well, right? Audio, video, and gaming. I think there is one more thesis of ours, which is that AR is an extension of like what video is, right? And AR is the next video. In a sense that it like while video is a unilateral consumption that I can see something and admire. But AR suddenly has come up that now it's a bilateral conversation that I cannot only just see it, but also be part of the content, or also experience something that I typically or traditionally would have only experienced at a store or a particular location, and now it's in my house. So on basis of that, we kind of work with lots of brands, both in media and entertainment sector, and brands working with the respective media companies. The intention there is that how do you get the slice of a customer's time, right? There's so much content out there, and especially more true than ever, that the amount of OTT content out there, like it takes me half an hour just to think through that what do I want to see, right? With all that abundant information, how do you make that right choice, value of time as well? Because now you know that though I have an entire day, I still have to make sure that the hour that I'm spending for my personal entertainment is valued. So that's where kind of AR VR helps you kind of differentiate than the traditional marketing strategies. Where let's say one of the example is we worked with Street Dancer earlier this year, which is a movie with T-Series, Varun Dhawan and Nora, and we kind of had a full-fledged 360 AR strategy with that. And what we mean with that is like there are 3 points of activation generally. One is your digital, one is your offline, and then your other mediums. The print, the way we activated was once you scan the newspaper, which has a movie poster or the billboards, suddenly you see Varun Dhawan tearing the poster and coming out, right? That kind of experience, making a stagnant content live. I think we've received great wonders and great feedback that now it's just not like seeing something, but now there's much more content connected to it. The other is there was an example where Varun and Nora, you could actually make them dance in front of you, or you could be part of the dance, right? So that's transforming that experience that I love the dancing and I can create something, but now I get to be next to the celebrity and kind of, be part of that content as well. And that's what it kind of makes it fun. The other side of the spectrum is like a brands where one of the recent campaigns during COVID that we did was for laptop launch, right? And one of the challenges for any physical product launch today is that how do I still give them the feel that the product is in front of you? And that's where kind of AR and VR kind of provide that immersive experience where I can just bring the laptop live in front of me and kind of make it feel that, hey, how it's going to look on my table or like my office space or whatnot, and actually click and explore that thing as if I'm in a store and talking to like a sales agent saying, what are the features of the product. So I think using these newer technologies, kind of there's a value, and sooner you adapt, sooner you fail at those things as well, is you kind of know what's working, what's not. So the adoption is based on the open mind, as Anil was also referring in the earlier thing, that it's not about like it's going to work or not. You will only know that it's going to work for your brand or not is when you adapt it, when you try it, and what is the right medium, you kind of get to it eventually.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So Ganesh, coming back to you, since at Mylan you guys work with a couple of M&E customers in the M&E space as well, right? So can you help us understand, and this is specifically for distribution and streaming their content that you all help them with, right? So can you help us understand what are the new trends or changes that you are noticing in this distribution and streaming today?
Sure. So, well, fundamentally, there has been a definite change in the shift, you could say, from the way many companies distributed content even a few years ago in a more DTH satellite-based method, now to its younger sibling, which is the OTT-based method, that uses the TCP/IP internet protocols, right? So it obviously has lots of advantages, but what we are seeing is that a lot of content is creation and delivery now is being tailored towards the OTT platform. Like everybody knows, we are seeing newer content only coming on OTT first, right? Also, the current situation is exacerbating it. But I think, like I heard somebody say earlier, that I think the expectation that the theaters will be the only places you can watch content and consume is gone, right? That whole thing is changed. So we are seeing that a shift in the way content is being created, the shift in the way content is being delivered. That's one. Now, from a TV, now you can consume content, you can engage with content in so many edge devices, right? Mobile, laptops, Fire Sticks, Chromecast, tablets, a bunch of things, right? Automotive, and so for each of these devices, you have certain limitations, certain methods of transmitting, certain methods of delivery. So that's also we're seeing that the number of things to personalize, even based on devices and content, is changing, right? Another thing we're seeing is that thanks to this medium, vernacularization is taking off, right? Now, something like in a place like India, we have so many languages. Why should only the few languages be the only way of consuming content, right? So vernacularization is huge. That's a huge thing we are seeing. That's one, both for new content and old content, and localization. Like we see in Amazon, you have shows like Panchayat or the Patal Lok, which I think previously you could never even imagine such shows to be there because the whole aspect. Then you see international players now changing their models. There used to be this, like Netflix, for instance, was, hey, take it or leave it. Now they're slowly changing the way they're looking at things. So that's also a trend we're seeing. This is on the customer side, but also technology is changing very rapidly to cater to these demands, right? So new kinds of streaming protocols, 3D streaming protocols, AR, VR protocols, multi-channel audio. All of this is now coming up because there's a market there, there's a demand there, and technology has to keep up. In some case, technology is ahead of that. And also platforms, like if you look at the mobile platforms, right, or TV platforms, the Qualcomms of the world, the Samsungs of the world are all changing and rapidly developing 5G-based technology, AI-based solutions. So you're seeing a whole ecosystem change, mainly because of the change in the way people are consuming content and the way the industry and the market is adapting to that. So overall, it's a great time to be in this space. Actually, there's a lot of technology challenges, a lot of business challenges, a lot of marketing challenges and awareness challenges. But I think we are enjoying it, and it's a great time to be in this space.
So, are you also seeing, apart from entertainment, any other sector which is coming up in terms of creating content and providing
Yes,
content in any of these mediums?
absolutely. Education,
Hmm.
edutech is a huge space. Fintech is another one, but edutech is, we already work with a couple of large players in India. EduTech, as you see, again, tier two, tier three cities. Now, that the proliferation of 5G, it will come 4G, right? And cheaper devices, and the willingness to pay for education content, which is beyond just consumption of media, but actually being able to learn, and there's a value towards that in the end. We're seeing a lot of changes in the EduTech market, in the way content is being created and distributed in that market as well.
Okay, interesting. So, Ranjan, coming to you, at Enterprise, you guys use emotional AI as a technology to build solutions which helps brands in multiple ways, right? Now, while you are doing this, I recollect in one of the conversation which we had, you mentioned that you'll also work on helping them in terms of advertising, right? Providing your AI solutions. So my next question is, since outdoor and offline advertising industry has been massively impacted, what are the newer ways of advertising and monetization in your experience that you are seeing that the industry is adapting?
Hello. Hey, Shweta, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that the shift fundamentally in the value chain that we are able to see is the consumer centricity that has come into picture, which was basically how do you create content and whom do you create content for? And the whole question about that, hey, I am a creative guy and I understand what needs to be built versus, hey, here is the consumer to whom I really want to build this content for.
Hmm.
These were two different mindsets. And across the value chain, if you see what has happened is that content, which was largely more about here's the option of content that you do have, and hence, Mr. Consumer, you go and view this. It has substantially changed from that to become I, as a consumer, is actually in control of what I want to view. So that is a substantial shift, and across the value chain, guys who are actually sitting at the intersection of distribution and content creation, and who has a real understanding of the consumer behavior, as in what people want to see, are best positioned to take advantage of such a situation. So, and that's why you see the guys like Amazon creating Amazon originals and Netflix creating Netflix originals, and they are going from one side. On the other side, if you see that there are guys like movie creators who are the content creators, the legacy ones who are actually trying to percolate into trying to understand consumer behavior. So across the chain, it is basically a shift between people paying for content, so the subscription advertisement going up, subscription revenue going up, and advertisement revenue in the whole mix of pie is sort of lessening as compared to how it was earlier. Brands getting more and more demanding about telling me how exactly do you justify what I just spent on in terms of branding or in terms of commercials. Can you give me a more detailed, articulated, data-led value proposition around it? So more and more with all these things coming around, how does brands and how does content creators actually understand these consumer nuances to drive their both subscription revenue and advertisement revenue with the data-led metrics is going to be significantly important. The second very interesting thing that we are saying is, and which Ganesh rightly pointed out, was about personalization. Now, you look at someone like Netflix, 3,700 user personas that they are driving on the platform, just for India as a demographic. So it is not anymore that five content creators decide what needs to be created because I am creatively superior. It is more and more consumer insight led content creation. It is more and more consumer insight led, advertisement revenue that is coming into the mix, and hence it is not anymore like one fits the all. It is this underlying data intelligence, which is going to be the transaction currency. In our case, we say that you know gone are the days when you can say that, hey, my ratings of my show is this much, and hence, Mr. PNG, you should pay me X. These are the days when, and likely to come days in which it's going to be emotion is the transactional currency, where how much strongly you were able to drive my brand equity, and the cognitive engagement with the consumer is likely to be the transaction element between advertisement and broadcasters as such. So that's largely how I would like to summarize what we're seeing around.
Yeah, yeah. No, so extending to that, Manoj, coming back to you, with you guys focus on analyzing consumption pattern for viewers, right? And this is across demographics and geographies that you all do. So, in your experience, how has consumption changed today, and what are the new patterns that you are witnessing?
Good, thank you. Thanks. I think I must say, Ranjan, you put it really well on the way things are panning out. And probably what I'm going to say is going to just add to the whole thing. Consumption patterns definitely are changing, meaning that's nothing but a single straight line with a impact font 48 size underline. But do we have the methodologies, the tools to understand what is changing, what is the trigger, what is the stimulus, and so on and so forth? And meaning these are embodiments of what are happening. 700 personas that are followed by Netflix is something that probably Netflix knows because they have huge amounts of data. Is it something that is happening because there are shows that are being watched on television or on OTT, which has got a woman protagonist? Or are the underlying factors of that show pointing towards the, smaller village kind of person making it big into bigger cities, let's say? These are the underlying thematic thought processes that are governing not only communities but countries at some point in time. Sentiment waves, as they are called. Do we have the sharpness of understanding the emotions that are lined over there? We don't call it emotional intelligence, or else I would infringe on the IP created by Ranjan, but we call it mood analytics. And a very simple example to give you is everybody wants to know who is watching, what are they watching, at what time, how long, and so on and so forth. But when you put these two psychographics together to a kind of analytics, I'll give an example. Let's say Nykaa wants to launch a new lipstick. Yeah, and they are past masters. They are a digital first company, so we don't have to teach them how to do this on digital. But if I offer to them an insight saying that we have a bunch of women 18-24 in Bangalore and Mumbai who listen to rap music in the evening 6 to 8, the chances that this bunch of people are going to be using a lipstick is higher as compared to women 18-24 who listen to Hanuman Chalisa in the morning. I'm not, there is no religious intent, nothing, zero. I'm just giving you examples whereby these things are stitched together. Then saying that, okay, I want to calculate the regression factor on saying that what is more relevant, what is the discriminant analysis is where the statisticians and engineers take over. But it has to start with a hypothesis saying that there will be a woman 18-24 wanting to use a lipstick who is more prone towards rap music than with bhajans. Now that doesn't require humongous amounts of data analytics, but I'm telling you and submitting to you that even that is available today. And in a similar fashion, saying that if I want to send out a message, in-app message, let us say, to people, male 35 plus, who are watching or listening to ghazals between 8 and 10 in the night, meaning I would definitely be a liquor company or something who would you or Glenfiddich out there or any other brand, because the chances that mood analytics will indicate that you are in that frame of mind is very high. So analytics is not only left to now on the how much or the, as I call it in scientific terms, the velocity indicator, which is kitna ho raha hai, kitna de rahi hai. But it is also going towards the second part, which is the next part of velocity is called acceleration. If all of us remember our physics, from 8th standard, acceleration is an indicator of engagement. That I can be on a straight road traveling for Mumbai to Pune, 222 kilometers or whatever. I can be traveling in a nice auto rickshaw or I can travel in a Jaguar. The engagement is going to be different. My destination is same. So therefore, these are the streams of, kind of persona that are being analyzed very carefully and very nicely. I'm not saying by infringing anybody's privacy, nothing. This is classic scientific statistical analysis that you can do. And that is where you start getting the layer of ML, AI, or any of the deep tech technologies that you're looking at. So the classic pyramid, and I will end with this, a little bit of professorial admission, is if you look at the way in which technology is structured, at the top are all the verticals, may it be entertainment or BFSI or e-commerce or any other vertical. In the middle are all these application layer technologies, and I think Ganesh will know it even better, is whether it is deep tech or AIs and MLs of the world, or whether it is any other correlative technologies, which is the middleware, let's say. At the bottom, there are three foundational things that have come together very well in the last decade. And I call it very, nonchalantly, again, with no religious intent, the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. B is for broadband, V is for virtualization, and M is for mobility. And just think about it as you step back, saying that if you did not have the kind of 3G, 4G connectivities that we have today, I don't think we would be on this AirMeet platform at all. We would still wait for the pandemic to go and say that, "Acha, kahin pe, Bandra ke hotel mein milte hain," and then we'll do it in February. Then comes virtualization. If we did not have the ability to store data in cloudified formats, whether it is AWS or Azure or anything else that you can think of, I don't think portability of data would have been so easy. And the last thing is mobility. Everything, meaning I am just sitting in a chair, but it doesn't, if I really had a thing to do, I would still be doing this at the back of my car, in a mobile fashion, in a smartphone oriented form factor. So remember this stack. There is broadband, virtualization, and mobility at the bottom, which is the infrastructure stack. There is all the correlative technologies in between, which are application driven. And then there is verticals that we are using. AI and ML can be used exactly in the same fashion for media and entertainment, as much that it can be used for industrial, RPAs and stuff like that, which I think Ganesh referred to. So this is the real 1, 2, 3 stack. And I think this is where Anil Nair took it away. I thought I was the only guy who will talk about it, but Anil Nair talked about it, saying that they are moving from waterfalls to stacks. And it's a very deep philosophy, laced with technological thinking, but it is applicable to all parts of industry. So I would just summarize whatever I said, is saying that please look at the way when you look at analytics, it is no longer velocity, it is also acceleration, which means it's not only the eyeballs, but it's also the quality and type of engagement. And the second thing is that now that we have this facilitative, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshes of the world, we can build on top of that in a very, very nice manner, without infringing on privacy, sticking to all kinds of norms that will come out soon in the country, and making sure that the experiences to end consumer are delivered even better, making sure that resources that we are using from the environment are lesser and lesser. That is the goal of engineering and technology that I would stand for, for the next 2-3 decades at least.
Thank you. Over and out. Since Gaurav has already come and given us one warning, I'll take my last couple of questions and then we'll open it up to audience for, I don't think we'll have time for more than 2 questions. So Snehal, coming back to you, since you work with these brands, what is the feedback that you have received from your customers? Are they willing to adapt to these technology solutions for brand visibility and engaging with the clients? And also, if you could touch upon the Book My Show example, which we had in our past conversation, where how these brands who were focusing on offline vertical, now they're completely moved towards online, and that has given them an opportunity to tap a larger or a broader untapped market.
Sure. So I know Manoj said not to refer COVID or pre-COVID or those kind of things, but I'm still going to use it. Just giving context, right? So to me, or what I've seen, right, when I was doing a conversation with a brand before this COVID event happened to now, there are 2 different things. Now I don't have to explain them the importance of the digitalization, right? Or how digital is that only medium today you're communicating and the most effective way to kind of speak to your customer. Like that wasn't there previously. Like if I would say, hey, you need to try AR, you need to try VR as these new formats, they would just say who's using it, right? And typically people take, especially in media entertainment, it's a top-down approach. Well, they say who's using on the top, and then I need to use. If they are not using it, I don't have to. But again, like media entertainment is different from that perspective as well. That I want to be the first. Right, and that's the beauty, and I think that's the advantage that we've had working in the space, that there are people who follow and there are people who lead. So luckily, we've been working with lots of customers who kind of lead that effort. Studios like Red Chili, studios like Dharma, studios like T Series, who are like open to innovation, who want to try this out, and especially in all available formats, right? It doesn't matter who's using it or not, but is it a viable option for me? So whether a certain content warrants it or not, I think that's the decision as well. While you'll see some brands who adapted later on, and we've seen like OTT players, right? They were already digital. For some reason, they were still using billboards and other mediums, of course, to get that offline people into the digital side, but they were still not using it at an optimum level. Suddenly, if you see Amazon Prime has flurry of AR experiences that you can be part of Gulabo Sitabo and some of the regional content that is coming up. Now they're providing experiences that, hey, you can have that look, or you can be part of that music video, or you can experience that specific product or content or merchandise that's in the content itself. That's because they want to get that slice of pie. They want to give something different to the customer, and get them the gratification as well, because that's what these newer formats will start happening, and start providing that advantage for. Taking the traditional businesses who've been more offline, or like I think the most heavy impact, as we were referring early on as well, is your traditional movie theaters. Like, we never expected such a thing to happen, and how those businesses were only who are offline, how they quickly adapt. And Book My Show, I think, is a great example that I love to refer. That when COVID happened, theaters stopped working, right? Events stopped happening. Everything that Book My Show was doing stopped. Just the business stopped, right? And they kind of got quickly up the feet. And I think that the one reason they could was they had already tried some of these things on doing online events or online workshops, that they were quickly able to say, hey, now I have to take this multifold, and let's do this now rather than later. It could last for a month, it could last for 3 months or a year. Now to them, it doesn't matter. They are kind of ready. They are adapting these online concerts that are happening, and it's wonderful as well, right? Today I'm being part of this event as well. It typically wouldn't have happened in terms of I had to be at a physical location, included travel time and all of that. And now I'm sitting in my bedroom, like talking to amazing people out there who've taken some time out this morning to kind of share our views, like show my AR shades as well, right, on how it kind of makes that connection. But yeah, I think that's what, like, a pre-COVID and during COVID and post-COVID, that's going to last, right? That these are the learnings. That it's not important. Don't wait for like a pandemic to happen, right? It can happen anytime. Be prepared, and try these new things out. Experiment, and then data will start giving you the sense that what should I use when, and when is the right moment. So I think that's the power that we have. It's not shooting from the gut saying today I feel I'm going to do this, right? You have data to prove. You have audience to say that I'm going to look at this content, or weekend is for me for a certain piece of content, like weekdays for me for gathering new knowledge. So that's the data.
Now that we as the larger audience, we have the infrastructure as well, right? Like what Manoj mentioned, the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So today, people have that kind of infrastructure, right? Even if someone is living in tier 4 or a rural area, has that kind of broadband connectivity. So that brings me to the last piece of content, and that, Gaurav, I won't take more than another 60 seconds. So coming to you, Ranjan, I feel this is important for the audience to understand. In your experience, have you seen the shift in consumer behavior in terms of paid content? And I know you touched upon it a little bit in your previous conversation. But if you can share more light on that.
Sure. So tons of changes, right? So right from what kind of content I want to see to whether it's the volume of content that drives my decision to become more and more confused of out of the 500 shows available on Netflix, what to watch. There's tons of behavior change happening. I would like to bucket it all into two primary aspects, which is there. One is the choice, and and second is the volume. And so one is that the choice, as in the device personalization and the control coming in my hand as a consumer, versus how it was that DD1 was showing me one show and I was bound to watch that one show which I have to see. So the choice that you do have with OTTs there is massive. Uh, and 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 you were earlier sort of in some ways forced to watch shows which was decided by how a content creator was creating it. I know that some of the content creators I met where they clearly say that, hey, my consumer does not know what to watch. I rather know what to build. And that is no longer true. And the media houses are very cognizant of it, and that shift is there. You can no longer ignore the fact that consumer is at the center of things, and things has to resonate in that sense. The major shift that from a consumer perspective, hence that I talked about from choice, I can watch it on phone, I can watch it on laptop, I can watch it on TV, and that is from a choice perspective. And second is from a volume perspective. I want options. I want as many genres as I want to explore as many categories as there. Um, and that's sort of a very important aspect for me to just have this notion that I can have 20 types of genres that I can watch at the click of the hand. But amidst all these things, there is an attention economy at play, or we call it attention or cognitive economy at play, which is me as a user. And the primary change is that a human's attention span has gone lesser than a goldfish in last 10 years. Our average attention span is about 8 seconds, which used to be 12 seconds in 2010. Which means that the users are impatient. You are giving them a choice of 3,700 content. How that person is going to make that decision to still watch something which is fitting to his attention span, and I don't have the time of more than 8 seconds to browse through one content and make that decision. And that's a humongous task technology leaders and sort of intelligence providers and businesses have to solve for. So just to summarize consumer behavior, I want a plethora of choices. I want it to be figured out in the shortest possible span of 8 seconds. And I want to have control of what I want to see. So these are three things largely happening.
Thank you, Ranjan. I think that's the third warning that we've got from Gaurav now. We'll open it up for the audience question. Gaurav, can we take one question?
Just one question, yeah.
Sure. So audience, anyone, any questions?
Any questions, you can raise your hand and come on stage, or you can type your question in the question box. Okay.
I think while we wait on the questions, Manoj, just an asterisk that your Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, I'm going to use it in few conversations of mine, but I'll give you credit for sure.
Okay, we have one question. Okay, just a minute. He's coming on stage. Sankalp Chaudhary. Hey, hi Sankalp. Please ask your question.
Hi everyone. Am I audible first?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So my question is essentially to entire panel, and so what I wanted to ask is like AI, ML, AR, VR. These are new kind of technology, and I'm asking this question from a marketer standpoint. So what I wanted to ask is like for every technology there is a set of adopters and there are a set of people who look for a mature technology. So as a marketer, if I want to market these technologies to media entertainment organization, so what would be a right approach towards people who are enthusiastic and right approach to people who are more pragmatic in nature?
So I can take the question because I think we are marketers at the core. So one of the things I'll say, media entertainment is a beautiful space in the sense that everybody is looking for the slice of the eye, at the same time headlines, right? So whenever typically you struggle, one of the lines that you can generally use is to say that this is going to get you the headlines, it's case study worth kind of stuff, and you'll find your adopters pretty quickly. If you try the traditional pitch that, hey, this is a great tool, data is there, you'll get lots of value and all, sometimes the adoption is slower as well. But if you pitch with the right value to the end customer, that this is the first, this is going to give you XYZ, or let's say the three drivers are awareness, engagement, and conversion, and what is that value for that each pillar that you can provide, then kind of, the conversation is simpler to do. So never try to say that this is new, that's why to try, but you convey the end value that will provide to the consumer of theirs or to the brand itself.
Thank you so much, Snehal. Thank you everyone for being such an amazing audience, and thank you to all the co-panelists for an insightful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
so much. We'll be back with next talk in 5 minutes. Thank you.